Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are and whenever you are. Welcome to the community live stream. My name is Chuck Tomasi, Senior Developer Evangelist at ServiceNow, and I am here on August 17th, 2020 to bring you information about scripted REST APIs. Not sure where that came from. The benefits of a live show. There's no editing that goes on here. It's one guy pushing buttons, running the lights, running the cameras. It's all happening here live. So any mistakes, you get to see, you get to hear. That's just the way we roll here. This is the community live stream. So good morning to everybody who's joining me on YouTube. Thank you very much. You people crack me up because they show up very early and there's this conversation that's going on before we even get started. I think we've got 6 or 7 likes before the show even started. You guys are amazing. That's just awesome. I invite you to go over, if you haven't already done so, go to the YouTube channel that's you see there on the link right there in the lower thirds. Subscribe, like, you know what to do. This is YouTube. It's 2020. You're smart people, you figure it out. Somewhere I had my phone, and if you turn on the notifications, you will get a notification that looks like, let me get rid of the other ones that aren't supposed to be there, something like that. It says, it's now time. And the notifications actually show up 30 minutes early because I do roll the stream early, so you can jump in and join that crazy conversation that's been happening. Thank you very much to everybody who's been doing that. The point of this show, if I didn't mention it already, or you haven't seen a previous episode, is to give you the tools to put in your toolbox to become a more effective ServiceNow administrator and developer and builder. We're going to do everything from no-code capabilities to things that are highly scripted. A lot of this is influenced by your contributions to the community, by your emails to me. Questions that come across the community are very important to the content and the generation and the thought process that goes into this, so that I can give you the explanation, the tutorial. Somebody asked me a question that I thought everybody knew it, but apparently they don't. So it means I've got to go back and cover that topic. No matter how simple the question may seem or how complex, I am a specialist in the platform on developer topics. That's what I do. Integrations, notifications. If you're looking for things that are deeper on things, ITOM, GRC, mobile, we have specific videos for that. I invite you to, again, subscribe to the YouTube link and you'll get that information as it comes out. We've got specialists that do that. I tend to gravitate more towards the core platform stuff that developers do. Thank you. Thank you for all the accolades on there. As a backup plan, just in case YouTube is acting a little finicky, as it does sometimes, we do have Twitch as a backup plan. Those videos are posted for a couple of weeks and you can go and check them out there. Also, if you've got something that is not directly related to today's topic, please go over to the community and ask that question. This is about scripted REST APIs. So I invite the question, the dialogue, and the tips. There's people sending me information back from that live chat saying, oh, this is what that's for. And hey, if you do this, you can save yourself some time. I love it. This is the live community interaction we have on this video. So please participate when you can. 2 p.m. UTC, which I'm not going to say you do the math because I wrote it down here for a number of time zones. That's 7 a.m. Pacific time, 10 a.m. on the east coast of the U.S. Note that these are the times between March and November when everybody changes their clocks around. I'm in Arizona. I don't change my clocks. So I always get up at the same time. It's always 2 p.m. UTC for me. And it will always be the same time on my clock. So it's not 6 a.m. in the winter and something crazy. So I have that benefit. Some of you do, some of you don't. But right now it's 10 a.m. morning Eastern time. 3 p.m. in London, 4 p.m. in Berlin, 5 p.m. in Moscow, 6 p.m. in Dubai, 7:30 p.m. in most of India. I don't know if I'm safe enough to say all of India. Somebody maybe correct me that all of India is on the same IST time zone. 10 p.m. in Singapore, 11 p.m. in Tokyo, and midnight the following morning in Sydney, until you all change your clocks again, and then the world goes crazy and I'll update you then. So hopefully that gives you a guideline of what time you can set your alarm, put it on your calendar. Maybe you do wake up at 3 a.m. if you're in Hawaii, or 4 a.m. if you're in Hawaii. And listen to this. Terrific. Thank you very much for joining me on that. Thank you again for everybody joining. Wow, this is a crazy crowd. Popular topic today, so give me just a minute to finish up the pre-roll, and I will get through this. Somehow my cursor got way off on this. Let's continue on. We talked about the community. Get those questions in the community. Hundreds of thousands of people that are there waiting for you to answer. Also want to invite you to check out the developer portal if you haven't already. Oh, wait, my cursor's on the wrong screen. I goofed. Let's do that again. There we are. Developer portal over at developer.servicenow.com. You can check that out. Get a free personal developer instance. Start working with the latest release, Paris, which has been out in early access about a month now, close to a month. The API documentation, examples, free learning plans, code snippets, a share community over there where you can share applications, integrations, code snippets. Is all a blog. Andrew and Brad and I have been contributing heavily to the Paris content. So I think last week was Flow Designer Week. This week is Integration Hub Week. So look for blog content and live coding happy hour. All that good stuff is over at developer.servicenow.com. Invite you to go check that out. And as part of that is the developer community. If you check the Connect tab on the top, see that up there where it says Connect? Over there where my hand gets, my hand disappears. Okay, fun with green screens. where go to Connect, and there's events. And the events will not only tell you what developer meetups are coming along, which we have 3 next week, Minneapolis, Pittsburgh, and, oh, shame on me, I forgot the third one. It is Minneapolis, Tampa Bay, I'm sorry. So one on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. I think one of them moved. I thought we had 2 on Thursday, but keep an eye on this calendar. That's where things move around. And on that Connect page is also under events. We have upcoming podcasts, upcoming webinars, upcoming community live streams. You will know what I'm covering in 2 or 3 weeks before everybody else by watching that page. So I invite you to go over to the developer community as well as the meetup page and get that. If you are like me and you build apps in your off time, please go over to bit.ly/tell us about your app and volunteer some of that information. You will help the COVID situation for every app you submit. I know some of you have done that. Thank you. Thank you very much. We'll donate $50 to the COVID Relief and Recovery Program. So please do your civil duty and generous contribution. Costs you nothing but a few minutes, and we'll donate up to $250 for up to 5 applications that you do there. If you haven't heard by now, well, I don't know where you've been, because for the last few weeks I've been shouting from the rooftops that the Breakpoint podcast is now available, and the second episode with Dave Slusher talking about Flow Designer and Integration Hub topics is coming out this Wednesday, so in 2 more days. If you go and subscribe through Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you find your favorite podcasts, we'll be there. If we're not on one of your podcast directories, let me know and I will submit it there. I just turned in the submission for Amazon and Audible. They're doing a podcast thing coming up. Shh, super secret. Only if you have a podcast do you know about that. But we'll be on there as well. So this is the Developer Podcast. We're going to be having behind-the-scenes discussions with our people, with customers, with old-timers. It's going to be a lot of fun, and look forward to bringing you that content in the upcoming weeks. So bit.ly/sn-break-point. The podcast is called Breakpoint. I know there's a tennis term called Breakpoint as well. Apologies, I didn't know. That's not a tennis ball on a stick. That's supposed to be a magnifying glass representing me, I guess. We'll move on from there. Tomorrow, the 18th of August, is our Tech Now episode 78, and we are going to be talking about how to build Now Experience components with Wolfgang and interacting with the data. So look forward to that. That will be in a little over 24 hours from the time I'm doing this live. And I'm using that as an excuse to really sink my teeth in and get ready for the Now Experience components. Go over to the bit.ly link you see there, TN78Reg, and get all that information. We will be doing a little bit of scripting today, and I will put this into the GitHub repo that you see right there on the bottom of the screen, bit.ly/sn-cls. so that you can pick it up and try it and break it and twist it around and mangle it up and make it all your own. That's a lot of fun. I'll have that available just minutes after I hit the stop button. So give me just a couple of minutes. Somebody put in the chat right at the very end before the show was done, hey, where's the code? You got to give me a second. I will have that. Pretty much everything else is pre-produced except the script that you see me writing live. That goes into the repo right after the show. So look forward to seeing that. If you are not comfortable with JavaScript and you'd like to learn more, then I offer you this JavaScript series at bit.ly/sn-learn-js. Thank you so much to everybody who's made this a huge, huge success. It's fueled the fire for more series like this. I'm currently working on one for integrations. End to end, all about integrations. But for now, we're going to stick with JavaScript. It's been out for a year. Lots of great comments. A lot of people sharing this with their colleagues and with their employees to help them get more comfortable with JavaScript. And this is specifically for the variation of JavaScript we've got on the platform. Because rather than a console.log in some places, you may need to do gs.info, for example. Learning some of those basic APIs to do database queries. This is all for you. It starts at basic syntax and it goes right through some pretty heavy-duty scripting stuff. So thank you. Mark says, the Now components, is that also now used on virtual agent for the custom control definitions, or is that different? I am not a virtual agent expert, but I do know some people who are, and we can definitely ask that. The Now experience and the Now components right now are limited to the workspace experience. When we get into Quebec and Rome and San Diego, those releases that are coming up in the next 6, 12, 18 months, we will be seeing it more widespread throughout the UI. But I don't know if it ties into Virtual Agent at this moment. Okie doke. Let me, last comment. I'm enjoy, sorry if I mispronounced that, but mentioned that helpful information about OAuth. Yes, I will be doing a specific video about credentials. Not every single one of them that we've got, but OAuth and API keys and JWT. Lots of questions. I had a wonderful discussion last week with Andrew Barnes, one of our developer advocates, and Brad Tilton, also another developer advocate in the developer program, about what topics should we throw in there. They were very clear that we needed some information about authentication, credentials, and aliases and connections. That can be a bit confusing. We've got some things to make that a little easier. Okay, now that I've covered that, let's get into today's main topic as I scroll down to my outline notes. Where are they? Here we go. I am logged into my personal developer instance that I got free from developer.servicenow.com. I'll get that ding going. And I want to do a quick basic explanation of what is REST, because some of you may not know. This is a piece of that integration. We've got lots of ways on the Now platform to get information in and out of the system. So one way is you could go to a list. Of course, we all learned this in our basic course. Let's go to incident.list, and we could export something as an Excel spreadsheet. Very common way to do it if you go down to export Excel, and then a spreadsheet gets downloaded to your computer. You could do XML. There's lots of ways to also import information through import sets and data sources. And, well, one thing that I absolutely love about the Now platform is the REST APIs. REST stands for Representational State Transfer. There's a Trivial Pursuit question for you. It actually was on our Jeopardy game at one point. It might be in the sample data, I don't recall, but if you go to the share and download Jeopardy, you can find that all out yourself. I wrote a Jeopardy app for ServiceNow. Have fun with that. Okay, what does that mean, representational state transfer? Well, it allows applications to talk to each other over the internet, and pretty much everything on the internet travels in text. Even images are represented as text and then decoded on the other end. Well, we can transfer some information from one system to another using this format called REST. And it's done over HTTP or HTTPS, same way that browser pages are done. You could use either the format of XML, which looks a lot like this. Right? XML, it stands for Extensible Markup Language. I'll show you a quick sample of that. If I say show XML, it's down here somewhere. Why do I not see it? We'll find a different record then. Fine. Be that way. Here, we'll take an email record. Somewhere on here, there it is, show XML. And XML has these various tags in it. You can see it says body text / there's nothing in there. Checkpoint to / checkpoint. A lot like HTML has H1 and /H1. Very similar in format. Just one way of transferring data from one system to another so that they understand here's a bunch of information that you can use for structured data. The other one is JSON, which is JavaScript object notation. And I'll show you that in a little bit. It's very common. It's probably the most common way that I've interacted with REST APIs. So what is the point? The point is that an application or a system can make an endpoint, which when you think about it is a lot like a URL, a web address. It says, go to this location on the internet, ask for this specific information, and it will return you something, assuming you have credentials, if there are credentials required. Let's look into some of the examples of doing that. We have on the side menu this thing called REST API Explorer. And this is a built-in tool to the platform, similar to like a Postman, only it allows you to quickly look into and evaluate what is in the system. We have a number of namespaces. Let me put this away for just a moment. These are the different namespaces or scopes that we have things, including some that I've built. I have one called GHC for my, is that my garage door controller? I can't remember. I've got one for, most of them that start with Now or SN are the ones that we came out with out of the box. You can create your very own namespaces and REST APIs, which is exactly what we'll be doing in a moment. Under Now we have, look at all this. This is all the stuff that's built in. The most common ones used are the table API or the import set API. I'm not going to go through every one of these today. I invite you to do a little investigation. And then, nice thing about the REST APIs versus their predecessors called processors, well, that's almost a Dr. Seuss thing. Like the scopes and the spokes, we have predecessors and processors. No. Scripted REST APIs, you can version them. So let's say you wrote an API a year ago and it was set up to accept certain parameters. Maybe you give it an ID and a table and it returns a record for that. Okay. We already have a table API, but let's assume you wrote one for your own special application. A year later, someone comes along and says, well, I need to also get this additional information. You say, well, to do that, I need a third parameter. You don't have to go back to the old software that was communicating, the third-party service that was using the two-parameter method to get information. You could say, all right, that was version 1. You keep using version 1. And the new application will use version 2, the 3-parameter version. So you can have different versions along the way, much like you see with YouTube or LinkedIn or Twitter. A lot of these systems come out with their APIs before they even do the user interface. They're thinking about not only what information is needed, but how do I connect these third-party services to interact with mine? And I've done that a number of times as well. Before I write the user interface, I'm thinking about what is that third-party system, even Service Portal. You can have Service Portal interact with your system as a third-party application through REST APIs. In fact, that's how I do most of my record updates and data fetches is through REST APIs. We'll get into that another time. I'm building out little building blocks along the way so we can start to connect these up into higher functions as we go through in the community live stream. So this is one of the things I want to show you. The REST API Explorer, let's do a real quick example. I've got different methods over here. This is important because this is how the HTTP connection communicates with the other system. If I said get, when you do a web page fetch, you're actually saying, go get this page. And the remote web server will send you that information in HTML and the JavaScript and the CSS. And all of that comes down with a get command. If you could look behind the packets that are flying around, somewhere in there it says, get URL. And it will get that. A post is if you need to create a new record on the other system. And then there's this put, patch, and delete. Delete obviously is instructing the remote system, I want to delete a record. And again, we've got full protection over this with ACLs and permissions and authentication to make sure that the right people are doing the right thing. Won't dive too deep into that today, but I want to mention that. Difference between put and patch is put implies you're going to send the entire record. They're very, very similar. Both are used for an update method. Okay, but put, you need to send the entire set of data. Let's say I have a record with 5 fields, and I want to update fields 1 and 3. Well, if I use a put, I still need to send all 5 fields with the updated values in fields 1 and 3. With patch, I only need to send the 2 pieces of information that I'm updating. If I make a mistake and I send 2 pieces of information with a put, I got to make sure I say these right because they're very close, it will empty out the other 3 fields that I didn't send. It goes, well, you didn't send them, so they must be blank. So be cautious in how you use those. It's technically possible, although it's not politically correct, it's technically possible to do a post with an update. You can do that. And there's nothing wrong with that, but you are in full control in a scripted REST API. When you're not using a scripted REST API, follow the standards of put, post, patch. Okay, post, create a new record. You're giving it all the information it needs to create that record, and it will often result in an HTTP status code of 201. Go look them up. HTTP status codes are pretty standard. 200 means everything worked, everything was okay. 201 is I created something for you. We're all familiar with a 404. That means I couldn't find whatever you were asking for, and it goes on from there. The 500s are where you have server errors. Right? Just never hurts to be a little familiar with these as you're building out a scripted REST API. You can look those up. Just Google HTTP status codes. There's even one in there, a funny one. I think it's 419 or 429. That's the status message is I am a teapot. I think it was used for testing at one point. Okay. So, hope I explained that, Abhishek, about the difference between put and patch. Excellent. Because it confused me for a long time too. And I will admit I don't always adhere to the proper standards. The REST API Explorer is very handy, especially if you're going to be doing your own scripted REST APIs. Let's take a quick example. My favorite incident table. Let's go get the incident table. Very easy to put together. This is, again, a very Postman-like experience if you use a third-party application. I could get a query in here. This is an encoded query string on Sysparm_query. If you want a lesson on that, we've covered that in various other videos. I'll keep it very simple, and priority equals 1. Now, for testing, I can say give me 1 or give me 10. I am going to ask for 10 records. It won't give me all of them that are all available. And I could also specify some additional query parameters. We'll get into the different parameters that we can pass here. I can also add different header parameters. For now, I'm going to ask for this in JSON format. I can get JSON, XML, or text XML. Most of the time, I do my interaction in JSON. This is how I'm going to ask for the information from ServiceNow. So if I have, say, a post command, I'm creating a new record, expect the input in JSON. This is what I expect back. And they don't have to match. They commonly do, but they don't. Okay. In this case, I'm going to send you JSON. I'm expect back JSON. And when I hit send, it says, hey, there's my 200 OK. That's good. I saw a shirt at a conference one time that just said 200 OK. This is the actual HTTP information that it sent. There's my get, because I specified a get command over on the left. This is the URL, and it goes right up to table. That's the API. The incident is the table I specified. There's one of my query parameters, Sysparm query, and here's another one, Sysparm limit. So the query parameters go on the URL or the URI. Okay, that's where we can pick those off, and I'll get into those when I start in receiving information and getting those. There's a whole bunch of other information in here. You can look through it at your leisure. It'll even tell you how many records it actually found, how many it's returning, how long this query took to process, 369 milliseconds. And down here in this grayish window is my response body. This is the content I get back from the server. And it comes back as an object with an array inside it called result. And here is one record that goes from parentheses. You can see I get all this wonderful stuff out of incident. Even if I'm not using these tables, or all these fields, excuse me, it tells me the link. If it's a reference field, assignment group is a reference field, excuse me, and the sysid value. A lot of great stuff in here that I get back. What if I didn't need all of this, or I didn't want all of this? That's just one record. Whew. It goes on and on. I can go up here and say Sysparm Fields. Let's just say, let's use the example that was already in here. Number, short description, and caller ID. That's all I want. Hit send again. And I get just those three fields. Number, short description, and caller ID with both the link and the value. Very nice. Now notice here, right in this section, I have some code snippets. So let's say I'm working with my friendly PowerShell programmer or my PHP friend across the hall. Sorry, PHP isn't in here. But my favorite Python programmer who's writing their own private system and wants to interact with ServiceNow. I can click this and up comes a code snippet for them to get them started on, they put in the right credentials in here, in basic authentication, username and password, and away they go. Here's the code you need to start talking to ServiceNow using this get command, exactly what I typed in REST API Explorer. So very powerful tool for creating third-party connections very fast. I use this a lot when I'm writing my scripted REST APIs because I want to test, does this work from a command line? Let's not get too involved with adding third-party applications or going into a script or creating my service portal widget and trying to make that communicate. Let's see if I have basic, simple communications, if I get what I expect out of my scripted REST API. Okay, let's go build one of these things. Enough talk. Let's do. Let's go to Studio. You could also do this from elsewhere. I'm in my community live stream app and I already have one called demo, so let's create a new one. Create application file. Scripted REST API. Down here under inbound integrations, I'm going to click that twice and up comes my form. Let's give it a name called, I'm absolutely unimaginative today. I'm calling it Chuck. It gives it an API ID. We have another question. Several releases ago, there was a bug in the script you get back from PowerShell. Don't know if they fixed it. I don't know either. I'm not a PowerShell expert, but probably wouldn't hurt to check in Paris. Be real quick. Hey, Chuck, are you going to cover sending attachments in today's session? Probably not. This is basic getting started with scripted REST APIs. There are methods available in JavaScript to help you encode and decode and put that stuff in. So I'm going to do just basic data transfers. So thanks for the question, Rohit. That's it. That's the protection policy is really for my benefit as a developer. If I want to make this protected, nobody else can see the code, which means it's a black box. I publish the API and away we go. Let's submit that. And that is the scripted REST service. There's two parts to this. There's the service and there's the methods. Each service can have a number of methods. I could interact with this service as a get or a post or a put or a patch. In fact, I typically have one service per application and then let the methods do all the rest. You may choose to divide it up a little differently. If you look at something like YouTube, they have a service for videos, they have a service for playlists, they have a service for channels. That's all how my API path is up here. This is how I'm going to interact with it, and I'll show you that in the REST API Explorer in just a minute. I could enable versioning. For this example, I won't. Remember, I could have a 2-parameter, 3-parameter And then somebody would specify in here, I want the version 1 Chuck, or I want the version 2. Think about that early on, because if somebody's using the latest version and you go and change some parameters, they may actually break on their other end. Now, down here in the related list, I have resources. This is where I start to specify the gets and the puts and the posts and the back. Let's create a new one. And I will call this, see if I have something special on my notes that I was intending to do. We talked about get, put, post, patch. We talked about XML and JSON. And all right, I don't have any specific code written, so we're going to write this live, come up with the idea as we go. I have courses, programs, students, that kind of thing. Let's go get a course and have it respond with the number of students, okay, in that course. Very simple. All I'm going to do is specify an ID, a sys ID for a record, and it will come back. So this will be get course student count. Give it a good name. You want to make it descriptive. It's going to be a get. I'm not updating anything. I'm just asking the system for some information. We'll start very simple. And notice over here the relative path. Very important, because each of your methods should have a separate path. If you use the same slash, you're going to need a different service for each method. Then you can only use one. If it starts with slash, it's going to go, well, which one do you want? So I'm going to call this get course count. That way I could have a get, I could have a put, I could have a, okay. So this is very important to have if you're planning to have more than one method per service. All right, requires authentication, good idea. Requires SNC internal, also good idea. Note the part about the security. You may or may not necessarily want all of these on. Requires ACL authorization. You may have, for example, a form that's publicly available. Well, in that case, you don't want authentication. If you have a service like tell me the temperature, tell me the stock market price, we don't authenticate with services like that. It's just publicly available. If you've got information that you feel safe publishing to the public, publishing to third-party applications, then you don't need authentication. The ACLs, a lot of interesting stuff in here. Study up on the ACLs. I'm not going to get too deep into the security. I want to get you a quick piece of information fast. In here is the scripted part of the scripted REST API. I am going to simply return some information. And note the process function parameters up here. I've got two objects available to me in this function. One is called request. That's what's coming in. That's what somebody is requesting from my scripted REST API. The other is a response. That's what I'm returning to them. Okay, so this is the center of the conversation. Request, what are you asking for? Response, what am I giving you? And I will dig into those a little bit in just a moment. Give me a second just to create a quick request, or excuse me, a quick response. In the meantime, I'm going to go over to docs.servicenow.com and look up REST request. I think that's what it is. I can't find it. REST request. There's an object, and I'm just missing it. REST API request. There it is. REST API request gives you the format and the methods and all the functionality of this. There is a REST API body. I've got a method called getHeader, and this body is of an object type as well called REST API request body. We'll get into that. This is the request. I can get all of these different parameters. There is also a REST API response. So all of this is very well documented. In the REST API response, we have a whole bunch of other methods. Get stream, set body, set headers. I want to set the body of the message that I'm returning back. So back in my scripted REST API, let's do request. And what it sends is an object. I don't need to stringify this first. That's done implicitly. In fact, let's create a little object. Var obj equals, we'll put status in here. I like to put status messages in. OK. And I often return some kind of message. Hello world. Okay, just a simple little status message. And when I do response.setBody obj, it will return that for me. So now that my code is pretty trivial, but still works, I did not mean to hit that. I meant to save it. When I save it, it gives me the full resource path that I need to engage with this, which I could give to another developer. Or I could go down to Explore REST API right here, and it brings up the REST API Explorer with the correct namespace, the method that I want. Everything's pretty well populated. I don't have anything to add to this except hit send. And in my, I get a 200, which is nice. Okay, I didn't set that. In my response body, I have my result object. It's always going to be there. You're going to have to deal with it. There's no way to get rid of it. And I have my status and my message, hello world. I've created a scripted REST API, very simple get method to return some information. And of course, being a server-side script, I can add any server-side code that I want in here, like var course.gr. No, I can't remember the name of the many-to-many attendee table. I have to go to my script includes, look at my constants. I wrote this, what, last week on my many-to-many table? Do not remember. It was course user. Okay, so it's called attendee m2m. That's the table I want. I named these simple so I can remember them, and now I failed. Okay, attendee gr equals new glide record. You know what? I'm just counting, so let's do like glide aggregate. On that table, we'll do an attendee gr dot add query. Our course is, where are we getting the course from? Well, our API needs to know the name of the course. This is where we start interacting with the request. Now, we could pass this information to the API in a number of ways. If you played with the REST API Explorer, you may have dealt with this. There are three main methods that I use. One is called path parameters. The path parameters would go up here. For example, I want to specify an ID, a sys-ID, a name, some sort of employee ID. I don't care. I put this curly brace notation up in the relative path to say, I expect a parameter in the path. Okay? That's one way. Another way is with a query parameter. A query parameter, which we saw from the incident example, is where it shows up in the URL itself. Question mark something, ampersand something else. Those are query parameters, and they typically have a name equals value part to them. Okay. Whereas path parameters is simply, all right, it's in this format, you better give it to me this way. First I expect a table, then I expect an ID, and it's all / something. And it's very prescriptive about what it is. Query parameters can be reordered. They don't need to be in a specific order, and you can usually pass a little more information in there. However, it does take up more space on the URL. I don't know. I'm sort of mixed between when to use one over the other. There are times when I say, yes, I definitely want an ID. I tend to use query parameters more than path parameters. You may have your own choices. Check Patrick's comment, you spelled course wrong. Where did I spell course wrong? Oh, I spelled course wrong up here. Thank you. Typos are important. I didn't spell it wrong anywhere else, I hope, where it counts in the scripts. Thank you. All right. I'm going to ask for a query parameter for the course, and I'm going to get it as course ID. And I do that with something like this. Var ID equals request.body. That's a built-in object. This is where I love the autocomplete, because you can see it's got a lot of stuff in here. I could get at the path parameters, I can get at the query parameters. That's what I'm after. Okay. I'm after the query parameters. Request.body would be if I used my third method of passing information to this, which would be in a post, put, or patch method. There you have to specify, the remote system needs to request with a body of information. We'll build one of those real quick. We are starting to run a little short on time. But let's do this. Request.queryParameters.CourseID. Whatever this name is what needs to show up on the URL. So let's make it a little more URL friendly, course under ID, and then I can check if not ID, maybe somebody didn't supply, maybe somebody didn't supply one, then I am going to do a response.set status, come on, and tell them you are wrong, this was bad, something happened. Let's just return a 500, and I can also do a response.set body. Now notice I don't have my OBJ up here. I could move it to the top, or I could just return an object in here that says message no ID specified. I like to try and do as much error catching with my REST APIs as I can. We still haven't finished this down here. For now, let's comment that out. I want to test and make sure that my error handling works, that it actually will fail if I don't specify that query parameter. Back to REST API Explorer. Again, very useful. I'm not going to change anything. I do a send, and it returns 500. Ooh, bad things happened. It's even red. And I get my OK hello world. For whatever reason, it didn't send back the response. Oh, because it fell out of here. I need an else. That should be an else. It just went and reset things and sent me a really lovely message even though something bad happened. The reason it sent the 500 is because there's no other set status down here. Let's align that. So I do a Command A, Shift Tab, try this again. This is why REST API is really handy when you're building your script REST API Explorer. There, no ID specified. So in order to specify that, I would tell REST API Explorer to go get and add a query parameter. Course ID. Well, I need a course ID because I can't remember any of them. Course ID. Here's a course. A course, of course. Let's go to CS210. It has some attendees. Yes? Yes, it does. We have 15 of them. And I am going to get the sysID from there, paste it into there. Congratulations. Now when I pass this in, I do my send. It includes it as part of the URL as a query parameter. Doesn't matter if it's first, second, third, fourth. It figures out all the question marks and ampersands and decoding and everything else. And it gets back, yay, I have an ID. I don't know if it's valid or not. But in any case, let's continue on with our script to count those things with a simple glide aggregate query. I can now use ID in here for all of the attendees that are in there. Attendee, I don't know, I called it GR. That's more of a glide record. Let's just call it GA, which means I have to change these. Typically, I'll use a GR for glide record, GA for glide aggregate. Add aggregate, count, attendee, GA, query, and I also need var count equals. Now, this is something I like to do, is set a count variable outside of my condition. For example, if they gave me a bad sysID and I didn't find any records, it's going to go, whatever. Okay. Rather than getting a 0, which may mean there's nobody signed up for this course, I want a -1, almost like that index of function on a string where it says it wasn't found. That's what I'd rather have for an error condition. Now my third-party system that's making these queries says, if I got back a -1, that means things really went seriously wrong and I probably have the wrong ID. If I got a 0, it means it's truly no attendees registered yet. So if attendee, should have made a shorter variable, .next, we did a query, so let's do a next to get that, and attendee count equals parse int, because it's going to come back as an object, possibly stringified. Let's not do that. Attendee.ga.getAggregate count, and I'm going to assume that's a decimal number. Now I have a real true integer, and I can put that in obj.count equals, I could put it in count. Let's just do that. You know what? Skip that. We'll make it part of the object right out of the gate. Count is -1. Assume a fault condition until someone proves otherwise. And this will become this. We'll do this in one line. There, saved ourselves a variable. Don't know why, but now that curly brace is in the wrong place. Now it's in the right place. We should be able to get a number out of there in the count attribute of that object. What do you say we try it again? We have our sysid up here. Let's just hit send, and it says 15. Hooray! Wasn't sure if that was going to work or not. What are the differences between URL and URI? URL is a uniform resource locator, and it typically just includes the point up to the end point, like index.html. Okay, that would be your URL. The URI will include all of the query parameters. That's my knowledge. I'd have to look that up to verify, but I'm 95% sure that's the difference. They're often used interchangeably. So it just means here's an endpoint you can go get. I honestly can't remember what URI stands for at the moment. Somebody in the chat want to look it up and throw it in there for me? That'd be much appreciated. Let's go make a post operation. Now I need to find something safe to post so that I can do that. Let's, you know what? We could create, we can make this simple. We'll just make an info out of this. So I've got my scripted REST resource to get the course count. Let's create another one. And if I refresh this list, I can see it down here. Let's create a new called simple status. You know what? I actually do want to create a record somewhere. You're passing a sysid directly from the client. Never trust the client. You're right. What kind of checking occurs to ensure that other invalid parameters didn't get sent out outside of intended? What is Google for 500? Chris, I'm not sure where you're going with that, but the client could send you just about anything on that sysid. They could say ID equals Chuck. That's where you need to have some pretty strong error checking in your scripted REST API. Let's build a post real quick. I am going to look for a very simple table that I can populate on this application. Employee table. Sure, that's fine, because it has a minimum field, number of fields. For example, we just want the name and title. Okay, we'll create a new record in the employee table called, we'll do name and date of hire. So in honor of Chris's question, we'll create a new scripted REST resource called create employee. This is going to be a post. I very often forget to set this when I'm creating a new resource. Oh, why isn't this creating records? Because you're not telling it something right. I give it a very descriptive name, create employee, and I'm not going to be doing too much error checking on this one particularly, but we want the body of that message, and the body is going to be in a JSON format. So we'll call this body equals request.body.data.something. Okay, maybe they pass it in as user. We specify all of the inputs and all of the outputs and the processing logic that happens behind this. That's the beauty of scripted REST APIs. Apologize for not specifying it earlier, and as we are getting closer to the summary, that's what makes scripted REST APIs so powerful. When you build one of these, you are in total control, and you can say, I need this, or I don't need that, and I'm going to pass this back, or I'm not going to pass this back. Different from table APIs, which go and query the records, you could combine multiple tables, lots of other great stuff. So I get my hands on the body with a request.body.data.whatever, meaning I need a packet of information, something like, well, we'll do this as soon as it's built. Okay, let's not get ahead of ourselves. And I could have all of the information in there, or I could break this apart and say var name equals body.name, var, what did I say, title equals body.title. Less typing. That way I don't have to type request.body.data.user.title, request.body.data.user. Okay, you get the idea. I like to break it down into smaller things. In this case, I will burn a variable. Let's just, I could go through the whole glide record and insert the record, but in the interest of time, I'm simply going to do a gs.info, new record request, new employee request, and say name equals name and title equals title. Save that. That's create employee. Let's go refresh this so that it knows I now have, hey, I've got a get and a create. Let's go to the create. I could specify additional query parameters, but I'm not going to. This is a post, and I need to fill in the request body here. I could do the builder this way and say name, Chris, add another one, title, wizard, and it builds this JSON payload for me. Or I could go to the raw tab and build something like that as well. You can choose which you like. You may already have something you want to copy and paste from another editor. That's very helpful. If you don't remember, or you're afraid you get your quotes and your colons and your commas all mixed up, then this would be a good idea as well. So I'm going to go from the builder in this case. I built my JSON payload. I send that, and it says, warning, you are doing a post. It's going to impact something on the remote system. Are you really, really sure? Yes, I'm really, really sure. And it says, you made an error. Cannot find type property from undefined. Oh, bummer, data. Okay. Anybody spot it? Maybe let's create an incident. That's a good idea. I probably should have done an incident. I forgot to say user. I need a user object. It doesn't work because I should have put some error checking, and you're saying, hey, you didn't really give me a user object. So my data format is incorrect is what it's telling me. I really need, let's go back to my builder, take this raw information, that belongs inside of a user object. So I could say here, user is an object. I did this to myself, right? And in that object is my other stuff. And now I have too many curly braces. I did that on purpose. Okay. That should work better. It was just a formatting issue. Are you sure? Yes, I am. The post worked. The body went out like this. I got a 200. Everything's okay. And I don't have a response coming back because my REST API did not return anything. By default, it says 200, everything's okay, unless, of course, you have a syntax error like I did, or a data error. But if I look in my logs, I should now have a message that says, new employee request. There's the name and there's the title. So I can now interact. I can pass information in with a query parameter or a path parameter, or in the case of a post, put, or patch, I need to supply it in the body. That's the point of the body. It says, hey, I want you to post this information. So how do we know what data is hitting our API? Very good question. Very good question. And I think I did a data logger episode not too long ago about sticking a statement in there that would say, where did it come from and what was the payload and all this good stuff. So go check for that in the backlog of these community live stream videos. I think it was either late April or early May when I did that. So I don't have all of these memorized, unfortunately, by topic and date. But that gives me a lot of power there. What else? Yeah, I think that just takes me to the summary where the tell you about scripted REST APIs. Great way to interact. We will be building on this in the future. but it's a very powerful and interesting way. One of my favorite topics to do, because I often build an application as the foundation logic in a script include. So I've got a way to count records or return a JSON object or build up things that I want to then pass to a scripted REST API. Or the scripted REST API is calling methods to do these updates. So they work very closely. Don't put all of this crazy logic. I did this just for demonstration purposes, and it was pretty trivial on both of these, that if I really wanted to count attendees, I would have created a script include called count attendees. That simply returns a number. Okay. What's the input? What's the output? Make it a very black box, easy to unit test, easy to build. See previous episodes on script includes if you want to hear me pontificate about that. That abstracts that information and allows you to change the APIs there. Then the scripted REST API is simply the vehicle for accepting those parameters and scrubbing them and making sure that everything is clean before it calls the script include and then passes back the result that the script include returned. Done that a number of times. Now your third-party application or your service portal widget can call this with confidence that it will get the right information at the right time. That's not opening 404 page here. I'm not sure where the 404. When will ES6 be available in ServiceNow? Vivek, excellent question. I get to ask that about once a week, and I turn around and ask the developer team about the same. I don't have a specific date or release on that, but it is on the roadmap. We hear you. There's a number of things in the Rhino implementation that are causing us a bit of delay, but it is very, very high on the priority of things we're looking into resolving. With that, I am going to invite you to be part of the community. Thursday I'm going to be getting into Flow Designer Basics. So there's a number of people out there who still are resisting the jump from old legacy workflow to Flow Designer. I want to give you a bit of a primer to get you started on that. Understand what the triggers and actions and logic and how these pieces fit together with the data pills. If you're new to the platform, this is also going to be a great start on Flow Designer. So also a way to get people like me off of business rules and scheduled jobs into Flow Designer concepts more to get you started on that. So thank you for all that information. One more last question from Chris. I was attempting to reference injection and the known item when the add query is invalid. It removes that. So it may unintentionally return more than you wanted. Oh, yes, there are properties and methods you can use to investigate to see if the query is valid. So if you're concerned about invalid queries, check out the property. I can't remember what it is, but just look up invalid query. There's also a gs.get session that lets you set a strict query on that. Or you could start looking into Glide Query, which I will have in an upcoming episode. That's a new API that we've come out that sort of wraps around and builds that expect syntax into Glide Record, but it's a lot safer, and the data types don't always come out as strings, which is my favorite feature. So I'll be covering Glide Query shortly. It was one of our most popular things at CreatorCon 2020, and we will likely be having it at CreatorCon in the fall, so we will be having another conference. Don't want to give you too much information about that. It's still in the early planning stages, but watch for information about that as well. Head over to the community if you've got more questions about scripted REST APIs or Flow Designer or anything else. There's a lot of very smart people there willing to help, and hundreds of thousands of them, as a matter of fact. Until next time, I'm Chuck Tomasi. Thanks for watching. If you learned something, go share it and be helpful. Till next time, take care. Bye.